average user is spending around $180 a month, just essentially waiting for their next paycheck. And that's in the form of predatory fees, like overdraft fees, etc. But it's also in the form of late payment fees. And it's also in the form of not being able to buy things in bulk, which has an effective cost. And that's just purely the financial costs of living paycheck to paycheck or day to day or week to week, right? Not to mention the financial stress that comes from being in that situation. But just purely from the financial standpoint, our average user is spending around $180 a month before they start using Rain. When they start using Rain, they pay a tiny fraction of that. Just from the financial standpoint, we're saving the user, around $160 a month.
This is the FinTech One-on-One podcast, the show for FinTech enthusiasts looking to better understand the leaders shaping FinTech and banking today. My name is Peter Renton, and since 2013, I've been conducting in-depth interviews with FinTech founders and banking executives. On the show today, we have Alex Bradford, the CEO and founder of Rain. Now, Rain has quickly become one of the leaders in the earned wage access space, or EWA, as Alex likes to call it. Regular listeners will know this is one of my favorite spaces in all of FinTech, so I had to get Alex on the show. We cover a lot of territory in this episode. We talk about Rain's model, obviously. We talk about their user engagement, what's in it for employers, partnering with HR companies, engaging with regulators, and much more. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So let's get started by giving the listeners a little bit of background about yourself. Why don't you hit on some of the high points of your career to date?
Yeah. So Rain is my third fintech. I've been building companies for a while. Before starting companies, I had brief stints at Goldman, McKinsey, went to Stanford undergrad, got my MBA from HBS.
All right, nice. That's some good names there. Let's talk about Rain and how you decided to get started. I mean, what was the aha moment? What's the genesis of the company?
Yeah, so in around 2018, late 2018, I heard about the employer integrated consumer financial services category. I heard about this company in Europe, actually. I was doing employer integrated installment loans, and I heard they were doing very well. And just on my previous lives, I had done a lot of research in the payroll software space. I did a lot of research on the buy now, pay later space, and also a lot of work in the microcredit space back in college. So in college, I TA'd this course called Social Entrepreneurship, and a big part of that course was focused on microcredit. Anyways, kind of sort of triangulating those three different areas. When I heard about this new category, the light bulbs went off and I couldn't stop thinking about it. Mm-hmm. And I kept asking myself, why is there no big company in this category? It must be a huge TAM. Certainly this can help tens of millions of people. So the TAM was clear. And I was like, actually, in the business model is probably really strong as well, because in terms of the unit economics, as I started digging in, it reminded me more and more of buy now, pay later, and sort of payroll software. And I just know that the HR tech space is very fragmented. It's very nuanced. There's room for multiple players. It's not winner takes all. And tend to be really good business models as well. If you look at the payroll software companies, you look at their financial statements, they just keep growing and expanding margins quarter over quarter. But the thing that was most exciting to me about the space was like, wow, so many people are living paycheck to paycheck, relying on predatory products still, like payday loans and overdraft fees, et cetera. And I grew up with a single mom in the 80s, and I remember what that's like, for a lot of my childhood. And I thought, wow, there's a new product that could effectively kill or almost kill those old school predatory products that really shouldn't exist anymore, and help tens of millions of people, and be a great business and a huge revenue opportunity. That's like the dream. That's exactly what I've been looking for. So once these light bulbs went off, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was just a nonstop obsession. And I talked to any employer that would talk to me, any HR software company that would talk to me, any investor that had looked at HR tech that would, just talk to everyone. And I realized a few things. I realized, first of all, the main two incumbents in the earned wage access space at the time had different challenges. And there's probably an opportunity to build a new company that kind of solves some of those issues from day one. And then the other thing is we realized that most of the employers we talked to had never heard of earned wage access.
Right.
And so we were not too late to the party. And also the other thing we realized is that a lot of the payroll software and timekeeping software systems that we connect to for our product structure, right? There's hundreds of payroll software companies. There are hundreds of timekeeping software companies. I realized that most of them by 2018 and 2019 were already in the cloud and had opened up their APIs in the cloud, or were in the process of opening up their APIs. Whereas 5 years or 5 or 10 years before that point, most of the payroll and timekeeping software companies really didn't have APIs or reliable APIs that you could connect to and automate this EWA product structure. So the point I'm making is that the timing was really interesting in 2019.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So let's get stuck into Rain itself. Maybe you could explain how your product works. How does it work for employers? How does it work for employees?
Yeah. So the way it works is we sign an exclusive contract with employers, and then we onboard the employer. We connect to their payroll software system and their timekeeping software system. And then we launch together with the employer and offer Rain to all of the active employees at the employer. The employee user hears about Rain. They sign up. Usually takes a minute to sign up. They connect their bank account to Rain, and then they're in the app. And then in real time, the user can see their earned wages and can access their earned wages through a few different options. There's an instant option where we send to the user's primary deposit account. There is the ACH option on the ACH rails, and that's a free option. And then the third option is if the user signs up for a Rain checking account and debit card, we offer free unlimited instant EWA. So the first option, we charge a fee. It's around a $3 fee. It's like a fixed ATM fee, which is standard in the space. And that's the main way that we monetize. Those are the three funding options for the employee user. And then we're funding the user from our structure, from our balance sheet. And then on payday, we are paid back by the employer automatically through what's called a variable payroll software deduction flow.
Right.
That's a big part of our magic sauce with our product structures. We figured out how to automate repayment with effectively no losses. And because we have no losses, we can offer drastically lower fees versus payday loans and overdraft fees, et cetera. The big two areas of our product structure are, number one, data ingestion and calculating the earned wage balance. There's a ton of engineering that went into that part of our magic sauce. There's just a lot of nuance when you're ingesting data from hundreds of systems in real time in different formats at different times. The data is not perfect all the time, right? So you got to clean up the data and make sense of broken data. So there's this whole complex backend data engine that we had to build that we call Nexus at Rain. To my knowledge, we have the highest user adoption in the category because we're so good at calculating the earned wage balance. So our average adoption is around 20%. So 20% of onboarded employees are active users.
Wow. Okay. Just to be really clear about this, when an employee comes on, they connect their bank account. You know that they're an employee of this company. Therefore, the payroll is happening on the back end. There's nothing they need to do. Is that correct?
That's right. So by the time the employee signs up for Rain, we've already connected to their employer's payroll software account and the employer's timekeeping software account. So we're ingesting all the employee data, or the basic employee data that we need for our products, such as first name, last name, email, cell phone number, wage or salary rate, start date, just basic data fields like that from the payroll system. And then from the timekeeping system, which is usually a different system. Most employers will use one company for payroll, a different company for timekeeping. We're ingesting the timestamp data. So it's just a few columns of data with all the punch in, punch out timestamps, right? And that's how we calculate the earned wage balance.
Right. And so that's obviously real time then. Someone will clock out, go to the app, and they'll see that that day's work is now being earned kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as the user punches out of their job at, let's say, Taco Bell, a minute or 5 minutes later, they'll see their earned wage balance, including the wages they just earned that day.
Right. Okay. Maybe you could talk about the usage itself. Like once they sign up and they use it once, I presume they become repeat users, right? I mean, what can you talk about as far as the usage goes?
When people are signing up for Rain, they become a reoccurring user and making multiple withdrawals per month. And what's interesting is there's a few type of user archetypes. There's the first type of user which really is living day to day or within a few days of their cash means. And that type of user might need Rain to pay for diapers tonight for their baby, or to buy groceries today, or to pay for gas so they can go to work, right? So that's the first user archetype. The second user archetype is someone who needs Rain really just to pay bills month to month. They're using Rain so they can make their rent payment on time, or their car payment on time. And then the third type of user is really using Rain mainly for emergencies. Their car broke down, or maybe they have to fix a tooth, or that kind of thing. Approximately 40% of our users are in the first archetype, another 40% in the second archetype, and the remaining 20% are in the last archetype.
Right. So the emergency people wouldn't be using it very often, right?
That's right.
The other 80, you said, are probably using it multiple times a month, right? Is that,
yeah.
I mean, are you measuring kind of how they are using it to their benefit? Like they're no longer going to payday lenders. They're really becoming more financially healthy. Is that sort of what I'm getting at? Is how do you know Rain is being beneficial?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we do track that. We do a bunch of surveys, and what's interesting is that there's a lot of benefits for employees. So based on our research, essentially our average user is spending around $180 a month, just essentially waiting for their next paycheck. And that's in the form of predatory fees, like overdraft fees, et cetera, but it's also in the form of late payment fees. And it's also in the form of not being able to buy things in bulk, which has an effective cost. And that's just purely the financial costs of living paycheck to paycheck or day to day or week to week, right? Not to mention the financial stress that comes from being in that situation. But just purely from the financial standpoint, our average user is spending around $180 a month before they start using Rain. When they start using Rain, they pay a tiny fraction of that. Just from the financial standpoint, we're saving the user, around $160 a month by not paying those extra fees or the effective fees, right?
Right.
But what's also interesting is by removing the stress, which is arguably even more costly,
right,
for people, that's the real benefit, right? Because look, if you can't pay for your family's groceries today, that's an extremely stressful situation, obviously. And if you can't pay for gas to get to your job, that's how are you going to get to your job, right? So these are real world issues that a lot of Americans are going through, of course, and it's stressful out there. And so this earned wage access product is, I would argue, is one of the most impactful employee benefits that can actually reduce stress and get people sort of on a better path. It's a benefit that will help people actually be more productive and be able to show up to the job on time. And
right.
So it's another interesting phenomenon that we saw is that EWA users actually work more hours. Our users, when they become a Rain user, they actually end up working more hours every month. And we think it's for these reasons. It's because we've removed some stress for them and they're able to work more hours. That's based on the data and what our users are telling us. The other thing that's really interesting is that if you're paid today, not only are you more likely to work today, but you are also more likely to be responsible and be thinking about your daily expenses.
Right.
The status quo is people are paid every 2 weeks in this country. In most of the world, people are paid once a month.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because It's not because that's what employees want. It's because that's what employers want. And that's what the laws also sort of allow for. Because in the US, you have this thing called constructive receipt, where employers by law must pay payroll taxes and social contributions 1 to 3 business days after they pay wages. And so that's why it'd be impossible for basically any employer to pay daily wages, because that would mean they'd be paying daily payroll taxes and social contributions, which no employer wants to do or can do. They would need to increase the size of their team. So that's for those reasons and other reasons, essentially the administrative burden for employers. This is the main reason why employers are paying biweekly. But that's all we can remember is biweekly pay, or some employers do weekly pay, but most employers in the US are doing biweekly pay. Because that's how it's always been, we just think that's how it should be, that's status quo. But that's not how it should be. People should have access to their earned wages. It's just the right thing for society. I mean, employees should not be financing their employers. That's effectively what's happening today. Yep. I mean, it's insane when you think about it. We live in a world, all over the world, where employees are financing their employers. Wow.
At 0%, right?
That is the definition of a broken financial system. It's a broken payroll system. And, EWA is one part of an overall solution to that broken financial system, broken payroll system. But what's interesting is, like, when you think, if you get paid every 2 weeks, and typically payday is Friday, versus, having access to pay daily, in what scenario are you more likely to blow cash on payday, on the weekend? Well, of course, the first scenario, right? And that's based on our data and surveys and focus groups. That's what we see, is that our users become less likely to sort of do wasteful spending or blow cash on the weekend of payday. And they actually become more aware and more conscious of their daily expenses. So revenue goes up, expenses go down, stress goes way down. So this is a huge value add for employees. And as a result, it's a huge value add for employers.
Right.
I talked about the productivity point. A lot of our clients, their number one pain point is just getting their people to consistently show up to the job and to retain their employees, right? And so EWA is one very important solution to help employers, drive retention and productivity. And what we see is that among our user base, when eligible employees become active users, they're approximately 35% less likely to turn.
Interesting. That's huge.
Huge impact on retention. We see that the average user is working, I think it's around 20 hours more per month.
Wow. That's
it's kind of shocking.
Right. And plus, I think the other piece around that is that and I'd love to get your sense of, like, people checking the app, because I when I've spoken to some others in the industry, it's like people suddenly become aware. Because right now, if you, like, the average person, if you're not using earned wage access, you kind of have some vague idea of what your balance is that your employer owes you as you go through. But most people don't even think about it, right? They get their pay on payday, and then they're done for 2 weeks. But with people doing earned wage access, they suddenly are hyper aware of what their balance is on a daily basis. Are you finding, like, how many people are checking their app every day?
I forget the exact percent, but it's a big percent of our users are checking the app daily. I think it's even the majority of our users are checking their balance daily. I think one of our investors, QED, said that this product of the earned wage balance product feature is the most engaging product feature in consumer finance.
I don't disagree, because I think it is, particularly when you see it going up every day. Like, I mean, obviously there'll be times you need to withdraw down on it, but for the most part, they're checking and they go, oh, look, I've made another $250. And it's a great habit to get into, actually, I think, to check that every day so you can see it growing. And so then you're hyper aware, well, okay, I have a dentist bill that's going to be $500 that I need to really take care of, so I'm going to take it out. But then I'm seeing my balance go down, and then suddenly, I've got to work that back up. It's just more awareness. So it makes sense that people, I think, are working longer hours and they're being more financially healthy. I think it may be the greatest innovation that we've seen in the history of fintech, really.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Let's move on. I want to talk about HR and some of the big, there's lots of big companies in the HR space. You've got ADP, you've got Workday. I noticed both of those companies on your website. I mean, maybe explain what you're doing with some of the large, HRM companies.
Yeah, so we partner with a lot of the large, medium, and some small HR software companies. And we have three flavors of partnerships. The first is an API integration or marketplace partnership. And it's typically a formal partnership with a signed contract. It might take months or years to actually form the partnership. And that's the kind of partnership we have with major software players like UKG and Workday and ADP and a bunch of others. The second type of partnership is it's a referral partnership where if the partner, which it could be a financial institution or a employee benefits broker or a payroll software company or a timekeeping software company, if they help us essentially sign one of their clients, then there's a little bit of economics in it for them. We also help them vice versa and help them with referrals, et cetera. And then the third bucket of partnerships is really, it's a productized partnership that comes in a few different versions. That could be a full-fledged white label where the partner has built EWA on our APIs. The second version would be sort of a carbon copy clone of our app, but with the partner's branding. And we do both of those. And then there's another version, which is more of a sort of a productized SDK approach where we'll drop a widget into the partner's product interface. And like, for example, a timekeeping interface where when the employee is punching out of their job, they can see, cash out with rain. They can see that a cash out with rain button in the timekeeping interface, which will take the user to our product, right? So there's a few different versions of how we're productizing with partners, which is really interesting because with one productized partnership, you have, in theory, you can have a lot more scale. One partnership, you can onboard hundreds of thousands or even millions in just a few months, right? Millions of eligible employees.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about regulation. Earned wage access has had a lot of activity, shall we say, on the state level, not so much on the federal level, although the CFPB has weighed in with proposed new rules. So how is RAIN engaging with regulators at the state and federal level?
Our approach is to be essentially relatively hands-off in terms of trying to shape regulations, but there's been 6 states that have put out EWA regs, and we are complying with all of those 6 EWA frameworks, which typically just means registering or getting a license with the state and agreeing to do ongoing reporting and complying with the state's relevant laws, which usually might be some cost disclosure laws. One state, Connecticut, has regulations around fees. So in Connecticut in particular, there's some question if that effective fee cap will remain or if it will get pulled back. We're hearing that it'll get pulled back. I think what's happening across the country is most states are looking at EWA and thinking of EWA as not a traditional credit product. You could argue it's a new kind of credit product, but it's certainly not a traditional credit product. It is with the same risks for consumers. The whole point of this product is to essentially effectively end those old school products that can have bad outcomes for consumers, right? It seems like most states are seeing that point. California, for example, October 11th, they passed their EWA framework, and I think they did an excellent job over 3 iterations in 2.5 years with that framework. And essentially what the California model, what that says is you have to register with the state, you got to do ongoing reporting, and as long as you do these certain cost disclosures and reporting and you're registered, there's no cap on the instant fee, right? So essentially, it's an exemption for registered EWA providers to California's credit laws, right? And other states have essentially done the same thing. And from the intel that we are hearing, it seems like the vast majority of the country, most states will do the same thing, some version of the California model. And there might be some states that have a fee cap on the instant fee. We're hearing that fee cap could be in the $5 plus range, which I think would that could be a good thing for consumers. It wouldn't impact our business model. And I think there's some confusion now sort of between the CFPB and their July ruling and how states are looking at the category, right? Because that's part of the issue with the U.S. is you have the CFPB, which is Warren's agency, under Dodd-Frank, and it's a new agency. They're still, figuring out their modus operandi. Right? I think they proposed this July ruling, which essentially says, hey, EWA is a type of credit, and EWA providers therefore must comply with Reg Z and TILA.
Right.
Which in particular, must comply with the fee disclosure guidelines. On the surface, that makes total sense. I mean, EWA players should be transparent about their pricing. I think the confusion they created is because the way the laws are written at the federal level, there's not a category of EWA, right? It's there's just a broad category of consumer credit. And if you try and put this new innovative EWA product that's really trying to solve a lot of the problems of traditional credit, if you put this new product into the traditional credit bucket and try and regulate it along those lines, it does create some confusion. So I think there does need to be some work done at the federal level to clear up that confusion. I'm not sure if that should be the CFPB or if that should be a bill, but I think it could certainly help the space if the confusion is cleared up at the federal level. You could argue it doesn't really matter because the states seem to be doing the right thing for consumers, which is passing some version of what California has passed. And arguably, California is the most progressive state in the country when it comes to regulating consumer finance.
Right.
Again, they've done a fantastic job. I think that is the model the country needs. Now I think it's just a matter of time, until most states essentially follow the California framework.
Right. California often takes the lead in creating frameworks that do get adopted nationally. But before we go, a couple more things I really want to get to. Are you looking to expand beyond your EWA product to other financial wellness tools? I mean, what are the plans there?
Yeah, so most of our roadmap is still focused on EWA, so building out our EWA platform. Some examples there include things we're doing for employers to drive engagement, and analytics tools, features and tools that can help employers essentially drive more adoption with this product and be more aware of the value they're getting from EWA. So that would be one type of example. Another example is we're building out our own deposit account product with a debit card. And that is a completely free product for employees. We think it's super important to offer a free instant product for employees.
Mm-hmm.
That's a full-fledged deposit account. It's a checking account with bill pay features and pretty much every key feature you get at Chase or Bank of America. All those basic features will be available in that product. And I see that one as it's a part of core earned wage access to offer that kind of deposit account, structure, because that's ultimately how you offer free instant EWA, right? And then we're also looking at building an innovative credit product. It's a full-fledged credit product with a banking partner that will help the user build their credit score. Because the thing is, based on our data, we know that a huge percent of the eligible employees at our clients. So right now we have over 1 million eligible employees on our platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that a very large percent of them have poor credit. We know that a large percentage of them do not have access to a credit card or any type of credit line product. And so we think there's something really interesting there, a completely new kind of credit product where the credit limit is pegged to earned wages. and there's really no risk to the employee in terms of going into debt because we're still, essentially paid back by the employer. The core product doesn't really help the user build their credit score, right? This new credit product would. We think that's a huge deal for our users and also a lot of eligible employees that don't necessarily need EWA, but they still would like to improve their credit score. So there's actually several really interesting things in the world of credit adjacent to our core EWA product that we're looking at building this year. One product in particular. A lot of the roadmap are sort of in those areas I just listed, and then there's some other products that we're looking at as well. In particular, in the world of savings, we think there's some really cool differentiated savings products that need to get built, where you can do, as a provider, you can do differentiated things that a direct consumer player can't do because you're integrated with the employer's payroll infrastructure. Just as one example, with health savings accounts and flex savings accounts. So only 15% of Americans actually use a health savings account. And the reason is because it's actually, surprisingly, it's a lot of work for employers to administer a health savings account program. It's a decent amount of work for employees as well, in terms of their tax filings, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just because it's a clunky, kind of old school product structure and also regulatory regime around health savings accounts. And I think there's something really interesting there where we can automate a lot of the product structure and essentially make it vastly easier for employers to offer a health savings account. We can build that kind of differentiated product because we're connected to all these payroll systems. Ultimately, the big idea here is, okay, like how can we help our eligible employees of our clients, essentially get on a better path, and which ultimately means, increase their revenue on their P&L and decrease their expenses on their P&L.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So then last question, I want to kind of get your vision for the future of wages, shall we say, in this country or even globally. I mean, while there's no system set up for us to do daily wages like natively, when is the tipping point going to happen where everyone gets paid whenever they want? What do you think it's going to take to get there?
That is the question, right? I think it needs to be a combination of factors. It's number one, it's just continued investment and innovation in this category of earned wage access and the adjacent categories. I think it's also a regulatory environment that not only clears the path for this category and removes any confusion or uncertainty, et cetera, that employers or stakeholders may have. But I think the ultimate would be, hey, if politicians could even mandate earned wage access or a certain level of earned wage access. For example, a certain number of employers must offer a certain number of earned wage withdrawals per pay period or something along those lines. I think that would be the ultimate way to really help people in this space, because still I think the space is very early, right? You're still talking about probably mid to high single digit market penetration in terms of the percent of the workforce that has access to employer integrated EWA, right? And so that's still very early. That's small. We're still in the early days of the S curve, and the reason is because it's not this category's been around for a while now. We're going on, I think it's over 10 years. I think Pay Active was really the first, right? But you still have a lot of employers that are just sort of on the sidelines, and they know that eventually they need to offer EWA, but they're sort of waiting. I think the vast majority of employers fall in that camp. They know they'll need to offer EWA eventually, but it's just for them it's a question of when, and we know that many employers are just they just prefer to wait.
Yeah, status quo.
Yeah, until they really need to. In several industries, EWA is becoming must have. In QSR and hospitality and several others, even healthcare now, in some areas of healthcare, if you don't offer EWA but your competitor down the street does, you're going to have a hard time. Right, so market forces are already at play there, right? But I mean, look, it's again, just goes back to the overall value of this product. It's insane that employees are financing their employers, and most employers know that they need to do this and do the right thing, but it would certainly help if regulators could facilitate this, the market wins much more than they are. I think again, states like California have helped a lot, but frankly, regulators should be helping vastly more than they are. I don't think regulators are even aware of how they could help or how important this product can be for their constituents. This is something I've been thinking about more and more in the last few months, and although, like I said, until now we haven't been that involved with regulators, but I would like for us to get more involved going forward, and at least try and help with awareness and education, and sponsoring more research initiatives that we give to policymakers, that sort of thing. So again, I do think that the regulatory side, I think it's moving in the right direction. I just think it can move a lot faster.
Right. Okay, well, that's a good place to end it on. Alex, really great to chat with you. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, Peter. I enjoyed the chat.
Until every employee has access to their wages whenever they want, there'll be more work to do with earned wage access. I firmly believe it is the best solution for most people who are living paycheck to paycheck. What I don't understand is why regulators, and particularly consumer advocates, are not pushing for this product more aggressively. It can take people away from the payday lending debt spiral permanently, and thereby improve their financial health. And as I said in the interview, EWA may well be the best fintech innovation for financial health ever created. Anyway, that's it for today's show. If you enjoy these episodes, please go ahead and subscribe, tell a friend, or leave a review. And thank you so much for listening.